In 1878, a Jewish poet stares at a Hebrew Bible open to Ezekiel, chapter 1. He's trying to invent a word that doesn't exist. A way to say electricity in a language last spoken on Jerusalem's streets 2,000 years ago. His eyes land on verse 4. One word, hashmal. Hashmal. He doesn't know it yet, but he's about to resurrect a celestial mystery and embed it into every light switch, power line, and electrical socket in modern Israel. But this story doesn't begin in 1878. It begins in Babylon, 6 centuries before Christ, where a priest named Ezekiel watches the sky tear open. Ezekiel stands among the exiles by the Chebar River, Jerusalem destroyed, the temple reduced to ash, thousands of Judeans ripped from their homeland. The prophet's world has ended. And then the heavens split. A storm wind roars from the north. Inside a great cloud, fire flashes and folds back on itself. Lightning doesn't strike. It churns, coiling, alive. And in the heart of this burning chaos, Ezekiel sees something glowing. He reaches for a word to describe it. Hashmal, hashmal. The scribes who preserve his vision write it down. They don't explain it. The word appears exactly once in the entire Hebrew Bible. One appearance? One cryptic reference in a vision so bizarre that Jewish tradition will later warn readers under 30 not to study it without supervision. But that single word, hashmal, launches a theological mystery that will ricochet through 3 languages, spawn an entire rank of angels, and ultimately power cities. What did Ezekiel see glowing in the fire? The ancient translators can't agree. When Jewish scholars in Alexandria rendered the Hebrew Bible into Greek around 250 BCE, they translate hashmal as electron. But electron doesn't mean what we think. It means amber. That fossilized tree resin, golden and translucent, that ancient peoples polish into jewelry. The Greeks noticed something strange about amber. Rub it with wool, and it attracts feathers, dust, hair. It creates a force they can't explain. They name this mysterious pulling power after the substance itself, electron. But amber doesn't glow in fire. It melts. Other translators try different solutions. Jerome's Latin Vulgate proposes electrum, not amber but the alloy. Gold mixed with silver, creating a pale gleaming metal. Electrum coins circulate through ancient Mediterranean trade routes, stamped with the heads of kings. This makes more sense metallurgically. Electrum can glow in furnace heat, but it still feels incomplete. Ezekiel describes something from the midst of fire, something that belongs to the burning itself. Medieval Jewish commentators wrestle with the word. Rashi, the 11th century sage whose interpretations become foundational to Jewish study, connects hashmal to 2 Hebrew roots, chashash, silence, and malal, speech. He imagines angels who alternate between speaking and silence, a celestial rhythm of proclamation and awe. The substance has become sentient. The glow has acquired consciousness. This leap from mysterious substance to conscious beings transforms everything. By the 12th century, when Maimonides constructs his systematic exposition of Jewish angelology, the hashmalim occupy the 4th rank in a 10-tier celestial hierarchy. Above them stand the seraphim, the Ophanim, and the Shayot, the burning ones, the wheeled ones, the living creatures. Below them stretch 6 more orders descending toward earth. But the hashmalim hold a particular position. They guard the threshold between the fire of pure divine presence and the realm where messages can be delivered to humans. Notice the architecture of this hierarchy. Maimonides isn't inventing it from nothing. He's synthesizing centuries of rabbinic debate, Merkava mysticism, the tradition of chariot or throne meditation, and philosophical precision. He places the hashmalim exactly where Ezekiel describes them, emerging from the midst of the fire, but distinct enough to be perceived. They exist at the boundary where the incomprehensible becomes almost describable. But here's where the story fractures into parallel timelines. While Jewish tradition develops the hashmalim as sentient beings, the linguistic mystery continues its own evolution. That Greek word electron, amber, begins its own strange journey. Medieval alchemists study amber's attractive properties. Renaissance natural philosophers investigate electrical effects. naming them after the Greek term. In 1600, William Gilbert publishes De Magnete, distinguishing between magnetism and this other force he calls electricus, like amber. The word electricity enters English. It has nothing to do with angels or visions. It's pure material investigation, lightning, static, the shock you feel touching metal in winter. Scientists throughout the 17th and 18th centuries chase this force, bottling it in Leyden jars, flying kites in thunderstorms, discovering that it flows through wires, powers telegraphs, illuminates cities. And here's the collision point. By the late 19th century, Jewish communities across Eastern Europe experience upheaval and renaissance simultaneously. Pogroms, emigration, Zionism, Haskalah, the Jewish Enlightenment. Among the intellectual currents, a movement emerges to revive Hebrew not as a language of prayer and scholarship, but as a living, spoken tongue. But Hebrew lacks thousands of modern terms. How do you say telephone? Railroad? Electricity? Judah Lieb Gordon, poet, satirist, Hebrew modernizer, faces this problem in 1878. He's writing a collection titled Gabashta, experimenting with neo-biblical Hebrew that can address contemporary life. He needs a word for this force now lighting European streets, this invisible power flowing through copper wires. He could invent something new, coin a term from whole cloth, the way German and French and English manufacture technical vocabulary. Instead, he reaches back to Ezekiel 1:4. Hashmal, that glow in the fire. That substance the Greeks called electron. That word appearing once, mysteriously, in a vision of divine power, manifesting as light and movement. Gordon makes the leap. Hashmal becomes electricity. The choice is audacious. He's pulling a mystical, angelic term into the material world. He's connecting the incomprehensible glow Ezekiel witnessed to the measurable current Michael Faraday quantified. He's saying, this modern power illuminating our cities, this force we've learned to harness and direct, it's the same mystery that blazed in the chariot vision. We've just learned to bottle revelation. The word takes hold. As Hebrew becomes the spoken language of Jewish Palestine and eventually Israel, Hashmal embeds itself in daily life. Electrical companies adopt it. Street signs warn of sakanat hashmal, electrical danger. Hebrew speakers internalize a connection their English or Arabic or Russian counterparts never make. Every time they flip a light switch, they invoke Ezekiel's vision. But notice the theological reversal. The rabbis moved from substance to angels, from Hashmal, the glowing thing, to Hashmalim, the sentient beings. Gordon moves the opposite direction, from angels back to substance, from the celestial hierarchy to the physics of current and voltage. He secularizes the sacred, then resacralizes the secular by using the sacred term. This creates a cultural palimpsest you can see physically. In Jerusalem's Mea Sherim neighborhood, a Hasidic community preserves traditions stretching back centuries. When they study Ezekiel's vision, they contemplate the Hashmalim as angels, as Rashi taught, as Maimonides systematized. 3 blocks away, a secular Israeli electrical engineer discusses Hashmal flow in power grids, solving differential equations governing electromagnetic fields. Same word, same Hebrew letters. Utterly different ontological universes, yet connected by that single appearance in Ezekiel 1:4. The modern Israeli cityscape literalizes this convergence. High-voltage transformer boxes carry warning labels, HSHML, Hashmal. Electrical substations bear the word prominently. Children learn it in elementary school science classes before they encounter Ezekiel in Bible studies. The chronology reverses, first the physics, then the prophecy. First the explainable, then the mystery. And here's the deeper current running beneath this story. Translation doesn't just convert meaning from one language to another. It creates new theological possibilities. When the Septuagint chose electron for Hashmal, they couldn't foresee that Greek word spawning a scientific revolution. When Maimonides placed the Hashmalim in the 4th rank, he couldn't imagine an Israeli engineer named Hashmal, it's a common surname now, designing solar panel arrays. When Gordon reached for that ancient word, he reunited branches that had diverged for 2 millennia. The English-speaking world missed this entirely. When you read Ezekiel 1:4 in the King James Version, you see amber. The New International Version tries glowing metal. And the Jewish Publication Society offers amber with a footnote. But none of these translations carry the weight of hashmal in modern Hebrew. That compression of ancient vision and contemporary technology, mystical hierarchy and municipal power grids into 4 Hebrew letters. And the mysteries compound. Scholars still debate what Ezekiel actually saw. Was hashmal a meteorological phenomenon? Ball lightning, perhaps, or the strange luminous effects of desert storms? Was it the glowing of molten metal in furnaces, the closest analogy available to a priest trying to describe the indescribable? Or was the ambiguity itself the point, choosing a word so rare, so undefined, that it could only gesture towards something beyond language? The Jewish mystical tradition embraced that ambiguity. Merkavah mystics, studying the geometry of the divine chariot, treated hashmal as a threshold word, language breaking under the weight of what it tries to describe. The hashmalim became not just angels but symbols of that very threshold, beings who exist at the edge of human comprehension, oscillating between speech and silence, between revelation and mystery. Medieval Kabbalists spun elaborate theologies around this, the hashmalim guard gates. They transform divine will into communicable prophecy. They stand where the infinite meets the finite, where the burning that consumes becomes the burning that illuminates. Their substance, that original hashmal, isn't separate from their function. They are the transformation itself, the medium through which incomprehensible power becomes intelligible message, which makes Gordon's modern coinage unexpectedly profound. Electricity is exactly that, incomprehensible power made useful. Benjamin Franklin's kite doesn't explain what electricity is. Even quantum mechanics struggles with that. We understand its effects, measure its voltage, route its current, but the fundamental nature of electromagnetic force remains as mysterious as what Ezekiel saw glowing. We've just domesticated the mystery, channeled it into wires, made it flip switches. Every Israeli saying hashmal participates in this layered history whether they know it or not. The ultra-Orthodox scholar meditating on Ezekiel's chariot, the secular electrician replacing a fuse, the child asking why the lamp turns on. They're all speaking the same 4-letter word, but reaching back to different moments in its 2,600-year journey. And here's the final twist. That journey isn't finished. Hebrew continues evolving. Hashmal now appears in compounds. Hashmale, electrical, as an adjective. Chashmalan, electrician, a noun that would sound to ancient ears like one who works with the glowing substance. Israeli electrical engineering students study Torhat HaHashmal, the theory of electricity, using a term that literally means the teaching of the thing Ezekiel saw in the fire. The theological implications ripple outward. If the substance Ezekiel witnessed has become the force powering modern civilization, what does that suggest about the relationship between divine revelation and human technology? Are we harnessing sacred fire, or discovering that the sacred was always physical, always material, always subject to Maxwell's equations? Is Gordon's coinage an act of reclamation or secularization? Both? Neither? These aren't abstract questions for Israelis. They're embedded in the language itself, surfacing every time hashmal appears, on warning signs, in news reports about electrical grids, in everyday conversation. The word carries its history forward, keeps the vision alive in mundane contexts, insists that the boundary between mystical and material remains porous. Stand on a Jerusalem street corner at night. Watch the traffic lights cycle. Read the illuminated shop signs. Notice the glow, steady, comprehensible, utterly unlike the churning fire Ezekiel described. Yet every sign, every bulb, every LED array pulses with hashmal, the substance from the midst of the fire, the 4th rank of the celestial hierarchy, the word a poet resurrected in 1878, now lighting millions of lives. Ezekiel watched the heavens tear open and couldn't find adequate words. He reached for hashmal, something glowing, something between states, something hovering at the threshold of understanding. That inadequacy, that gesture toward the ineffable, became theology. Then it became technology. And somehow, impossibly, it remains both. The glow persists. The mystery powers your lights. And every time you flip the switch, you're speaking Ezekiel's language, still trying to name the fire, still glimpsing something that exceeds our grasp, still reaching for the word that means the light we haven't fully explained. The priest by the Shebar River would recognize the continuity. The glow endures. We've just learned to wire it into our homes,